Hello everyone and happy Tuesday or whatever day it is for you. So today I am painting some marshmallow peeps, and when I was a kid they only came in yellow chicks and pink rabbits, and now there are all colors and it's kind of fun, but they still taste the same. I tried one and that hasn't changed. Anyway, so I'm going to paint some rabbits in this video. And we're painting in gouache paint, which is kind of like an opaque watercolor, and I'm painting on a watercolor block. All right, well, I thought that instead of demonstrating or talking about the process, I would instead talk about some of my favorite things about spring. And I made a list of some of my favorite things and thought I would share that with you. So first of all, crocus. If you're not familiar, they're little, usually they're purple, but they could be white or yellow as well. One of the first spring flowers I see. It'll even come up if there's snow on the ground. And then daffodils and grape hyacinth. And whenever I see those, I just feel so happy inside. And then after that are lily of the valley, which I am lucky enough to have in my yard, and I love the way they smell. They are so fragrant. And if you're not familiar, they kind of have a leaf that looks like a tulip leaf, but then they have white little bells on them, and well, they look like little bells that hang off like they're about to ring in the breeze. Okay, and then the next thing is a forsythia blossom, which is on a tree or a bush, and it's also bright yellow as a daffodil. Okay, let's talk about food for a minute. So growing up in Chicago, I'm not Polish, but this is like the Polish capital of the Midwest. So I grew up with pierogi, and pierogi in Easter time is one of my favorite things. It's kind of like a dumpling. It could be filled with cabbage or cheese or meat, or even a sweet filling. Okay, and if it's got butter melted all over it, it's even better. All right, so watercress, sorrel, and nettle are three things that I find on the ranch at this time of year. They're wild forage foods that I love to make things with, either put in salads or make a soup or something with. And the watercress will even grow when there's snow on the ground. We have a warm spring on the pasture, and even if it's freezing out, because of the warm water that's always 67 degrees coming out of there, a lot of times the watercress will grow right there in the right coming out of the spring. And then another thing is wild asparagus that actually can be foraged, and spring mushrooms like morels. Okay, so let's leave food for a while. And when I was a kid, it was white shoes. We were always told we couldn't wear white shoes till Easter. And you know, as a grown-up, I don't really wear maybe except white tennis shoes, but I still like the idea of white shoes in springtime. Balmy days, and I have to say today was one of those days. Everyone was outside here. It's like not just the people. I went for a walk, and usually when I go for a walk it's so cold and I'm so bundled up and there's like no one out, even in midday. And today there were so many people out, old people, young people, animals running around. The squirrels were out. Everyone was out of hibernation. It was just a beautiful day and a lot of energy out there. Okay, longer days. So our time just changed last week, and we had a spring forward, and now that will help us have supposedly longer days. And by longer days, I mean obviously the days are not longer, but it does help for people who work all day to have more daylight during the times they'd normally be working, which would be like 8 to 5. Okay, so after that, let's see, birds chirping. I love to see the birds come back. Yesterday I heard geese, and I'm starting to hear more bird activity, so that's really exciting. We get a lot of fun birds passing through this time of year, kinglets and warblers and things that are on their way up even farther north of us, but they'll pass through this time of year, so that's really fun to see some of these birds that are migrating. Okay, baby animals of all kinds. If you've seen my videos on the ranch, this is the time of year when the calves are born, so there are hundreds of baby cows everywhere. There are also, just in my yard, baby rabbits. Even here in Chicago area, we have baby rabbits, we have squirrels, baby birds, and all kinds of wildlife. And then on the ranch, you know, besides cows, there are all kinds of wildlife, little baby deer, fawn with the little white spots, more baby birds, and sometimes I'll even see a baby moose or some other thing. Another thing that's really cute are the baby quail, and the way they run around with their moms. So, all right, long walks. And so I took a walk today. I love to get out every day, get some fresh air, especially when you're in a studio full of paints and art supplies. It's really important to get that fresh air. And a lot of times it's a struggle to get out, and when you're freezing cold, it's no fun. So I do love the warm weather, and I feel like my skin is starving for that vitamin D. And so to go outside and take a nice long walk, and also every day just see what else has popped its head out. So it might be a new flower, or you know, seeing, like I said, the squirrels and things running around. And every day it seems like the grass will start to grow or get greener, and so it's all fun. All right, mud puddles. Some people might think that's not really a very good thing to love, but first of all, I mean, if you're a kid and you have your rain boots on, I mean, what's better? There isn't much better than a mud puddle. And I love to watch animals roll around in their wallows and mud, and I love to see the birds taking baths in the mud puddles. But I don't even mind stepping in mud puddles. I actually had one in the backyard. We've had a little bit of flooding. This town is actually in a floodplain, so there is some flooding that the engineers work very hard to fix. But it seems like they fix one neighbor's problems, and then it just makes the rest of the neighbors have more problems. And so I seem to be getting some of the overflow from fixing our neighbors' problems right now. But one thing that I really love this time of year is when the mud puddle has ice over it, because it's not the kind of ice that if you step on it, you're gonna fall in a pond. So it's fun to step on and watch it break. And then that goes along with mud puddles is worms. And some people might think, whoa, that's kind of gross, but I love big fat worms. I love watching them wriggle around. To me, it's a sure sign of spring. And being a gardener, worms are our friends. I'm not talking about slugs. Those are not our friends, but just worms. And I've never had a problem with worms. They're my friends. Okay, I could also say caterpillars, because those are a sign of spring, and they're going to turn into beautiful butterflies. I love watching sprouts or seedlings, like I had mentioned when I go on walks, and seeing them peek their heads out of the ground. I like to do my own gardening, so it's so exciting to see the seeds finally germinate and come out of the ground. And then also even just like blades of grass, just seeing all that new growth is just a sign of renewal, and it just feels so good this time of year, coming from especially a very cold climate that has all 4 seasons and a very long winter. And speaking of growth, buds on trees are some of the other things that I enjoy this time of year. And they start as little buds, but before long there are blossoms everywhere. It's like popcorn on the trees, I've heard it say. And some trees smell so fragrant. There's just like a whole month or two of continuously blooming. Well, you know, we'll start with red buds and forsythia, and then move into magnolia and lilacs, and it's just so fun to see all the flowers blooming. And did I mention red buds? Those are one of my favorites. Okay, so then kites. Let's go fly a kite. Mary Poppins. I love like I mentioned, balmy weather, and that includes a bit of a nip in the air and some wind. Usually with all the changing temperatures, it usually brings a lot of wind. And so flying kites, my kids are older right now, so I haven't done any kite flying with kids, but that's no excuse. I could still fly a kite, so maybe I will. All right, and back to candy and food again. Jelly beans are one of my favorite things about spring, and I'm not necessarily a fan of jelly beans, but coming from Chicago, we are the home of the Jelly Belly factory, so I grew up loving Jelly Belly beans and all the different flavors. And one of my favorite flavors is cotton candy and buttered popcorn, and those are not even really like normal jelly beans, but they're two of my favorites. And if you have just the regular jelly bean pack from the store, say like Brock candy or whatever, then it's strange, but my favorite was always the black jelly beans because they taste like licorice. And it was also the black and brown Neckos, if you're familiar with Neckos, because they were the cocoa ones or the licorice ones. Those were the two I liked best. All right. Other Easter candy I loved the malted egg balls. They look like speckled eggs, but they are the malt balls. And then growing up, my parents thought I was allergic to chocolate, so I always got a white Easter rabbit, and everyone else got a regular dark chocolate, well, like milk chocolate Easter rabbit, and I got a white one. And now I'm not allergic to chocolate, and I eat it almost every day, and usually very dark chocolate. Okay, I also love Easter eggs. I love decorating Easter eggs. I love painted Easter eggs and dyed Easter eggs of all sorts. Birds' nests are one of my favorite things, especially this time of year, because they probably have an egg or two in them. Family gatherings, and this year there's a lot of holidays, and just with the warmer weather, also graduations and weddings, things like that are starting up. So it seems like this is a time of year where we come out of our shells again, out of our hibernation from the beginning of the year, and start getting together with each other again. So it's a nice time of the year for family time. Okay, parades. And we just had a parade in our town last week, and it was pouring rain. I didn't go, but when I was little, my children love to go to the parades, and this would be the St. Patrick's Day parade in our town, which is quite large and pretty well known for the Chicago area. Lots of Irish people here in Elmhurst and the Chicago area in general. So lots of bagpipe bands, Irish dancers, the Shriners that do their little goofy things. I've seen the Blackhawks and sports teams bring their mascots. We've got all the politicians out there. What else is usually there? So we have lots of bands and dancers. So high school bands. And then I mentioned the Irish dancers. They're so cute with their springy curls in their hair. And then the bagpipes. I love the bagpipes at St. Patrick's Day parades. And on the actual St. Patrick's Day, of course, in Chicago, they dye the river bright green and then have another parade. That parade is harder to get to because you'd have to wait. I mean, unless you are in the bandstand, you'd have to wait a long time to get a good seat where you're able to view it, I think, pretty well. So that being said, I also love spring flower shows, and I went to one, maybe you saw the video, the orchid flower show, and there was actually another orchid show that same day at the Chicago Botanical Gardens, but this show is actually a private show that I went to. It's just Hauserman's is an orchid growing business that's family owned, and it's just used to be in my town, Elmhurst, but then they moved out to Villa Park, which is the next town over. And they sell orchids all year, but the spring show is when so many of them are in bloom at the same time. So they have this show and give a discount, and they have 4 acres of greenhouses, so it's pretty amazing. And I've been to other spring flower shows in the city, and yeah, just getting you ready for the summer. And so all these spring kind of garden shows and flower shows are really fun. So one of my favorite authors I think of this time of year is the illustrator Beatrix Potter, and just Peter Rabbit and all the little animals that you think of in springtime, hedgehogs and squirrels and mice and things like that. Okay, so speaking of wild animals, if one is out west in the mountains, a lot of people look for shed antlers this time of year. So a lot of people that collect antlers, you might think, oh, you just killed it for the antlers. No, what happens is every year the deer and the elk, they actually shed their antlers. So you can just find them places. They just drop them and they grow new ones every year. So you can find them, and it's kind of fun. That's something that some people actually go out and do out west, like in Idaho. Okay, so another thing I love to do, being an artist this time of year, is actually painting all the blossoms that are blooming. As many of you know, I paint a lot of birds, and you know, I'll put them on branches, and sometimes just a plain branch or on a wire, but it's so fun to add the flowers, and you can just do so many things with blossoms and birds, and I just can think of endless combinations. And usually, I don't know, I just love blossoms, so it's kind of a fun thing to do, is putting the bird on a branch that has spring blossoms on it. And I think it's also a nice way to capture the blossoms, because the blossoms aren't there for very long, and then the whole tree leaves out. So they're not always super accurate as far as that bird being in a certain tree that's blossoming a certain time of year, but I still have fun with it anyway. And it's just about having fun. So Anyway, another thing I would say back to Idaho is I love spring skiing out there. There's still a lot of snow, but the weather's getting warmer. In fact, if you've ever seen people skiing in like bikinis or anything like that, that's usually in the springtime because sometimes it'll be super nice out, and when the sun hits you, it'll be really warm, but you can still snowboard or ski. In fact, Tahoe this year says they're going to be open till the 4th of July, I believe, because they still have 70 inches of snow in the mountains. It's crazy. So sometimes it's not the best powder in the springtime. And in fact, the place I ski near my ranch, they end the season with actually snowmobiling up the mountain, kind of tearing it up. But yeah, when they're all done, they're still having fun on the mountain. So I'm not into the snowmobiling, but definitely that would be a good place to snowmobile is on the ski hill, because you're not tearing up the natural places. So it's probably a good thing to do on the ski hill. All right, so that wraps up my list. So I hope you enjoyed it and hope you're enjoying this video. I'll just leave the rest to play some music, and hope that you have a happy spring, and leave me any comments about some of your favorite things about spring.